Welcome to the Followup podcast. My name is Hayden. I am the worship director here at Arbor Church, and today I am joined by Michael Solis, our children's pastor, and Ryan Plants, our lead pastor and speaker from Sunday. This last Sunday and today marks the end of Better Together. We did 3 weeks talking about how we're better together.
That's right.
And first week we talked about, it was a grow together.
First week was serve together.
Serve together. Second week was grow together. This week was invite together.
Yep.
So we had the first week we kind of talked about the elevator pitch of what we were kind of hoping for with this. And we had talked about just church and life and really everything is better when we are doing it together in community.
Yep.
Ryan, do you feel like we have kind of hit that spot with the congregation in the teaching that point is felt to an extent? Do you feel like the practices we put in each week and where we're at kind of hit the mark with what we were going for?
Yeah, I think our aim in this series was to, like you said, Hayden, get to that point that we are truly better together, that life is better not lived in isolation and doing our own thing, but when we consider others more important than ourselves, and we serve together, and we make the intentional time to get together with one another and grow together. And we want to invite other people to be a part of that process. And when we invite other people, we want to do that together. And so I think it definitely accomplished that. I sensed that each week we had a specific movement that we were calling our church to, that we were moving toward together. That first week, kind of stepping out into where can I use my gifts? Every single person in this body is necessary and important. And then the week after that, that we can't do this together. If Jesus, what Bryan said, if Jesus needed community, then so do we. And how we find that here at Arbor as we gather together on Sundays, and now as we're launching groups, being able to connect and plug into groups. And really taking that, I think that final last bold step of faith. I think it's not easy to step out and serve. It's not easy to step in with other people and connect and grow. Yeah. But it's certainly not easy to kind of put yourself out there in relationship and be like, hey, can I pray for you? Can I talk to you about my relationship with Jesus? Do you want to come to church with me? I think that's the hardest one, but I really sensed that there was some excitement and excitement looking forward to doing that. And I'm really hopeful to see what happens here at Arbor as a result.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting about our weekly rhythm here at the church is we sit down on a Monday and we talk about Sunday, and then Tuesday we develop the sermon that's coming up in 2 weeks, and then Wednesday we future plan. And I think that we have all this optimism and like these projected futures that we're going to hit as a church. Yeah. And then we get to come on a Monday and then do a podcast today, and we kind of get to see like, all right, how did it go?
Sure, yeah.
Did the points that we thought would get communicated and felt, and really I don't think it's even communicated, is did it land the same way that we thought it would land, right? Yeah. Because we clearly see an importance in what we're talking about when we're programming. And it reminds me of like a writer's room for like a sketch show of like, are these jokes going to land? Like, we think they're funny, but like, is the audience going to laugh? And for us, it's like, okay, we think this is important and should be like urgent, right? But is that what was communicated on Sunday? Like, are people like, we need to hand these out? And I think that's kind of the challenge that we sit through of like, okay, did we do a good job everywhere else? Because obviously we can write these amazing messages or put together these great worship sets, but at the end of the day, when people are leaving, are we like, okay, they took their cards, and are they going to sit in their cup holder in their car till like next week? Or are they going to hand them out Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday? So, but I loved the series, and I loved that we got to not necessarily relaunch or refresh, but just kind of like a reminder to people of this is fun. There's more people showing up. We've got this energy going. Yeah. But we still got to go back to the fundamentals, right? We got to go back to the basics. What was your favorite week of this series? I know it was only 3 weeks, but if you had to go back and really say this one, I felt like it connected well with the congregation. Does one stand out over the others?
I would have to say my favorite moment of the past 3 weeks was the end of our Serve Together weekend, that very first weekend.
That was cool.
I really appreciated how our team came around and went above and beyond to change the environment and the atmosphere of that room out there to be a place where, if people felt called and in a place spiritually to give of themselves and connect and serve, that they could have those opportunities.
Yeah.
And I saw so many people taking advantage of that and stepping up. I think, Michael, you and Arbor Kids got so many more new volunteers.
So good.
Yeah. And I think there were so many different areas where we saw that. But even for those who were like, you know what, like I'm still just kind of new to Arbor, or I'm not in a place where I really can give that energy right now, to really just provide that space to connect. And I just thought that was a really sweet time to have everyone there, and everyone hung out for a long time. You know, it was, I would say that was probably my favorite moment to see that time of connection.
And we're if you're listening to this and you are currently not serving, we still have places to serve.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was a great plug, by the way. Thank you. That was good right there.
Thank you, Hayden.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime we can get a little push in there for teams, I love it.
Arborchurch.com/serve.
I think like one of the cool things about this series is it's kind of encapsulated just the different vibe, spirit, whatever word you want to throw on it, of the church right now. Of a lot of this feels nostalgic to Arbor pre-COVID, like back when we were doing 2 services and we had a lot of people in the room. But what's cool about it is it feels like the good old times, but different in a good way, right?
Good,
like it feels more intentional, and it feels, I think, especially even your push to say, if you are in a spot where you need to take a breath and you need to recharge, do not feel pushed into that. And I don't want to compare and contrast too much between what Arbor was and what it is now.
Sure.
But it's very it's a weird place of, this is nostalgic, and it feels like the good old days, but it feels better than the good old days, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you've been able to come in, Ryan, and articulate things that we've felt and we've thought, but whether it's just the exhaustion of the past 2 years or maybe just being in the monotony for 2 years, it's like, oh man, you are saying the words that we've failed to find over these past 2 years. So it's been really cool to see an energy here at Arbor that we've just kind of been unable to get going, right?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm right there with everyone. You know, whether it's Arbor's story or really any church story right now over the last 2 years. I understand the last 2 years were really hard, but I also think many of us in our own environments, whether we were at Arbor in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or we were at a different church, I think many of us found ourselves in places where we were living a pace of life that was essentially like every day we'd wake up and it was a sprint. When in reality, I think faithfulness is best achieved when we pace ourselves at a marathon pace. And that's what this is. You know, I'm here for the long haul. I hope everyone who's plugging into Arbor, to the extent that, you know, they're not going to be moving out of town, is here for the long haul, and that we would serve at a healthy marathon type pace, you know, where this isn't like we need to, you know, build something really big, really fast, but that we would build a healthy, God glorifying community where people can use their gifts, where people can come and rest and heal, a place that really could be for everyone.
Yeah, to serve and be served.
Yes.
So cool. You know what I found fascinating about these last 3 weeks is, depending where you are at in your marathon, your walk, your journey, you could start at almost any one of the 3 weeks and be in a very different place. You know, for example, if you're someone who's new and you've been coming to church, you might be right in the grow together stage. You've been around and it's like, oh, you know, I've been fed. It's time for me to serve. But if you're someone who has just been invited right off of that 3rd week we taught here yesterday, you could be coming in and it's like, oh, this is great, and I'm understanding what it even means to grow together, and in that growth process, I should probably serve sometime. Like we could start with the invite together week and go the other direction. It would still be just as impactful.
Absolutely, yeah. Totally.
Well, and I think that repetition makes it so impactful. Like, I don't think that anyone heard any of these 3 messages for the first time when they came here. Like these are like your it's going to sound mean, but like these are your basic messages, right? Of like, this is what it means to be a Christian, to be a church goer. But that repetition is so important because we all know this stuff. Like we all know that we should be doing X, Y, and Z, but we find ourselves not doing it. And I think that's what's so cool about doing these messages and having these intentional times throughout the year to get people involved in groups or serving or inviting people to churches. We just need to hear it over and over again. And it's never not going to be true of, okay, you're right, I'm not doing maybe the best job at this, but I'm doing a good job serving, or I'm doing a good job inviting people. But yeah, like I haven't been involved in a group for a year. It's just sometimes we need to hear that. And I think it's cool that it's going to hit fresh for different people in the congregation. And we obviously saw that over the past 3 weeks. We've seen people hopping into teams and people hopping into groups. And we were joking in our staff meeting. We took our attendance from yesterday, and then I said, let's multiply that by 3, because obviously we're going to have everyone invite 3 people each, and they're all going to come. So we're going to have to do 4 services next Sunday.
It's going to be a packed house for sure.
It's going to be wild.
Especially with that 10 a.m. Seahawks game.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Maybe we should temper our expectations.
Exactly, yeah.
I do want to hop into the message. We've been kind of talking about the whole series overview, but let's talk about the invitation message. I think for me, when I got your manuscript, I was putting slides together, and then I was listening to it. One of the biggest things for me, why I have a hard time inviting people to church, is that fear of rejection.
Oh, sure.
And also, if it's someone that I'm not in a deep relationship with yet, the fear of like, oh, I have a bad experience with Christianity, and now that I know that you're all about it, I don't know how close we're ever going to really get as friends. Was that something that you had thought through in putting the message together, that fear of rejection or potentially closing a door maybe too early in a friendship or relationship?
Kind of going at those 2 hangups, I think that was one I was thinking through, was like rejection. But regardless of whether we have all the answers, regardless of, we know ourselves too well. It was the idea that like, I'm not good enough, like I know my mistakes. I don't have it all together. But regardless of those, even if we did live really, like these like perfect, squeaky clean lives, and even if we did have all the answers and we took, like a bunch of apologetics classes and we had like this like airtight defense, which, I think oftentimes we'll find nowadays that sort of mentality actually can repel people away, because you're like, oh, you have all the answers? Okay, good for you, and then they'll sort of walk away. But I do think that, the fear of rejection was another hang up I was thinking through. And I think that in order to get over that, one has to understand, and this is something that we all wrestle with, this is something I wrestle with, is that the thing that I'm inviting that person to, the thing that I'm offering that person, I genuinely have to believe that thing is offered in love, right?
Yeah.
Genuinely more important than like jeopardizing that relationship.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean by that. Not that you disregard that relationship, but that it's the same. It parallels to the idea that like sometimes speaking the hard thing to someone is you're gonna be fearful of that, because you're like, well, what are they gonna say? And if I called this out in that person, and again, not that they're the exact same situation, but I do think that in order for meaningful things to happen in relationship, risks have to be taken.
Yeah.
And this is one of those risks, and it's some of us are more risk averse than others. But again, I go back to that idea. In order for meaningful things to happen in a relationship, risks have to be taken.
Yeah.
And this is just one of those risks, I think, in a relationship.
I think God blesses those risks that we take. I think God's like, you know what, maybe, I knew it wasn't going to be perfect, but here, this is great stuff.
Yeah.
And when you were just describing that there, I had 2 thoughts. My first thought was, for the people who maybe it seems like they really do have it all together, I can't identify with those people, and I'm sure other people can't either. Like, I'm not good enough apparently to go to that church.
Sure.
Or if it's just someone who seems to like win all the debates, they know it all. It's like, no, I really don't. that's just going to bring me down all the time because I'm always
Absolutely.
wrong.
Absolutely.
So I think there is something to being said for not having all the answers. And I loved your point with Philip and Nathaniel as far as come and see. You know, it wasn't I just won the debate, so now you got to come to church with me.
Yeah.
It's like, come see for yourself.
Yeah.
And when you bring it to that level, it's like, you know what, I actually don't have all the answers. I'm still figuring it out, but I can lead you to where there's hope and to where there's life, and that's Jesus. And come see for yourself.
Totally. Totally. And I think going back, Michael, to what you said about having it all together or having all the answers, I think the common denominator in a person who admits I don't have it all together and admits like I don't have all the answers is humility.
Yeah.
And I think humility, especially in our day and age right now, is tremendously attractive, right? I mean, Christ took the most humble posture possible, and we are called to model that in our relationships. Unfortunately, with humility comes a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And this is what we talked about at the very beginning, that very first message I taught back in July, that like we so dislike uncertainty.
Oh, man.
You know, we want things to go a certain way. But again, I think that uncertainty drives us to further dependence and humility on Jesus, so that in those relationships, we can be transparent about our real lives. We can be honest that we don't have all the answers. And I think that is tremendously attractive in our day and age.
Yeah, and if you step out and you take a risk, as we're talking about in your relationships, and there's something that happens where it doesn't go the right way that you were hoping or wanting to, I would say that's what our community is for as well.
Yeah.
Like, come share those stories with us.
Yeah.
Because we would love to embrace you and say, way to go.
Yeah.
We're here for you.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Man. Hayden's like, what next? I'd love to just interject one thing here, and kind of an epiphany from yesterday from me. Was this idea that we are Christ followers first, right? Jesus was so good at inviting, and that was the message for us. But for me, it was the first time I always felt like, some people, as you said in the message, are good at evangelizing, and that's their thing. And it's like, it's part of who we're supposed to be. Maybe it's not my thing. Maybe it's hospitality, or maybe it's just whatever. But the second part of that with Jesus is come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of people, as we discussed. And that was even though I've read it probably hundreds of times, that's the first time I went, those go together.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not like, and I will kind of make you that. It's no, that's what you will become.
Yep. Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. It's a promise.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, Ryan, that you went with the fishing analogy, especially since you leaned into the fact that you don't like fishing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you really leaned into your weakness, or the thing that you don't enjoy to do. But I thought it was really cool to look at it not from. I think sometimes when we bring these examples, we talk about it from like an expert level, you know, like you didn't go into like, a fisherman always has a well-supplied tackle box.
Yeah.
It was like, it was,
sure,
like
you could have gone that
point.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people are really good at fishing, but anyone can do it. And that's so true. Like you talked about going out and buying the cheap, easy fishing poles for your kids.
Yeah.
And I thought what was really cool about it was, it gets people into that mind frame of, oh, okay, I'm seeing the parallels he's drawing here. But again, it wasn't anything new, right? There was no new learning in that of like, we're making it real easy for you.
Yeah.
Anyone can do it, right?
Yes.
You don't have to be a world-class evangelist, right? You can just invite people. And you gave that example in scripture of just come and see. And I think that we kind of saw in that conversation, there was a critic or someone skeptical. And instead of jumping into defense, right, it was, you should just come and see. Clearly, there's a value that I see in my life because of what I'm involved in here.
Yep.
You should probably just come and see if you like it. What's it going to hurt? It's going to take an hour out of your Sunday or whatever, in that context, however long they were going to be at that thing. But I think that's what's so big for us to realize. And you had said it in, we're called to be witnesses, not attorneys, right? We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to be so thoroughly versed in apologetics. Sometimes the best thing is to just lead with the value that you've seen in your life, right? Of it's kind of unexplainable. like you should just come see it yourself and judge for yourself if it's something you want to be a part of. And I think next week we're going to have a follow-up sermon, right, on what to do after you invite somebody. I'm just kidding. We're not.
It'll be exactly. It'll be like the step by step. Like once you've invited them, what happens after that?
Yeah, exactly. It would be like an FAQ part of the sermon where it's like, this was a weird week. Like it's usually better on Sunday. Sorry about that. Like the worship team,
exactly.
They played some deep cuts on stage. It's usually more CCM. Top 100.
Totally.
So funny.
Totally. Yeah.
Hayden, on what you're saying, I once heard a great analogy, and that was someone said, "Describe the taste of a strawberry." And you get all these different like analogies. Like I've even heard someone say like almost has the flavor of a grape or like but you can't like describe it really when you think about, like, if you're listening, stop and think, how would I describe eating a strawberry? What would that taste like? But when you actually give someone a strawberry and they bite in, they're like, wow, that is amazing. I don't even know how to explain what I'm eating here.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just like that when it's like coming to church. Like I can tell you all about it, but you need to check it out for yourself.
Yeah, totally.
And it's really, it is a difficult thing to describe what it's like at church, because even it's very hard to find someone who doesn't have any church experience at all, whether it's like they went to a VBS as a kid or they went to a summer camp or their grandparents took them to church. But it is kind of interesting, and some of the stuff that you talk through of like, we sing songs kind of like karaoke. The words are on the screen, but we're all singing together. And then we sit down, and this person gets up and they read something, and it's kind of like teaching at school. It is like a weird thing to describe to someone who doesn't have a church background, but it is hard to put it into words, the value of it, besides just leading with, hey, this is something that I've seen a lot of benefit in my life, being a part of this. So,
well, it's so difficult to describe the experienced presence of God, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about what we see Philip do in that one example, where he's just like, come and see. We see that here, that where 2 or 3 are gathered together, God promises to be there. He inhabits the praises of his people. And we sing songs in a karaoke style way where the words are up on the screen and someone gets up and talks like longer than like your typical television show, and everyone just seems to like pay attention and really like be blessed by it. And it's one of those things where it's like, I can't really explain exactly why you'd want to be there. But something important happens there. Yeah. And we encounter the presence of God, and we are changed. And it's not like this like big, like everyone leaves and they're like they're like the Shekinah glory is shining from their face. But it's that day by day, like, that long that obedience. How does Eugene Peterson phrase it? That long obedience in the same direction. Yeah. And I just think there's something really beautiful about that.
Yeah. So as we kind of close the podcast and wrap things up, I just kind of want to look at the practical side of things of, if I'm someone listening to this podcast on Wednesday morning and I still have 3 cards in my cup holder, how would I go about, like, let's say...
You should feel totally guilty.
No, I'm just kidding.
I agree. You really should. Yeah.
But, or maybe I put them in my wallet just in case, right? I was going to take them out at some point. But what would be maybe some people to look for in my life? Like, who are some people that I should be thinking through of, like, okay, maybe I'm intentionally invisibly writing someone's name on this because I'm going to hand it to them at some point? Or should it be just in my pocket at all times and I come across somebody in line at Starbucks or out to eat? What's a good way to get that ball rolling and handing off those invite cards?
Yeah, so here's what I would do. I would say, if you're listening to this on a Wednesday morning right now, maybe you're driving in your car and you're heading into work, or you're dropping the kids off at school, and you've gotten this far in the podcast already, and you're looking down and you see, wow, I've still got those cards. And here's what I would do. I would take 5 minutes today, and I'd grab one of those cards, and I would just sit, whether it's in your car or in your office or at your house, and I would just take a couple minutes, and I'd be like, God, would you lay one person on my heart right now? And just wait a little bit. Ask God again, God, would you just lay one person on my heart right now? And allow God to put that one person on your heart. And then once you have that person, be resolved in the next 24 hours to go to that person and invite them to church.
So cool.
And I don't know, I'll ask God to give you the words for that person. Maybe it's a person in your life who you know is going through a really hard time, and you can be like, hey, Michael, I know you're going through a really hard time right now, and I'm not sure that this would be something you'd be interested in or not, but I go to this church and the community there is amazing, and I'd love to go there with you. I think it could really benefit you. If not, don't worry about it. I'm sorry that this is kind of weird, but you were on my heart and I wanted to share this with you. Or maybe it's a friend that you've been thinking about for a long time and you're just close and you're like, hey, this is a really important part of my life and I'd love to share this part of my life with you. And it'd be awesome to go and maybe grab Chipotle afterward or something like that,
cool.
And acknowledge the awkwardness of it too in that moment. Just be like, hey, I know it's strange. Not every day someone comes up to you with a business card to a church saying, hey, you're invited. But this is important to me and I love it, and I hope,
care about you.
And I care about you. And if you say no, nothing will change. You can totally ignore or disregard this moment.
And I think that should count for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday as well, if you're listening.
Totally. Yeah. If you're listening, if you're catching up on this podcast and it's, Saturday morning and you're doing chores around the house, same thing, just take a moment and ask for God to lay one person on your heart. Maybe you grabbed 3 or 4 cards, but just one person.
That's awesome.
One person.
Awesome. All right. Well, Ryan, do you want to inform the listeners and watchers what we got coming up the next 10 weeks?
Yeah. Really excited about what's on the verge for us at Arbor. One of the things that I absolutely love doing is I love doing a deep dive on a book of the Bible. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a deep dive on the book of Philippians. And Philippians is a very unique letter among all of Paul's letters. It's a letter that has no correction or rebuke for the church that he's writing to. He's writing to a church that he loves, a church that has been faithful, a church that's been obedient, but a church that is going through a difficult circumstance nonetheless. And Paul's encouragement to them is in the midst of the difficulty that you're going through and that I'm going through. Paul's writing this letter from prison. He's like, in the midst of the difficulty, Paul not only models unbelievably resilient joy in that jail, he encourages the Philippians who are reading this letter and going through tough circumstances themselves to understand what it takes to step into a way of living that produces that kind of resilient joy regardless of circumstances. And so my hope is that in these 10 weeks, and I know it's a long time, but in these 10 weeks, that we would really understand and that the Holy Spirit would guide us in our understanding of how we as followers of Jesus can have a unique, unusual, resilient joy amidst a world that, again, from the very beginning is, full of uncertainty and chaos. And it's like, no, I will experience joy when, right? I'll experience joy when I get that promotion, when I'm financially secure, when that relationship is fixed. What Philippians is saying is, even if you don't get that promotion, even if your financial situation remains precarious, even if there's still hardship in that relationship, you can experience a supernatural, resilient joy in the Lord. And man, this is not coming from on like a mountaintop. Like here are all the secrets. Man, I am in that. I am in that pit. I am in that valley. I am on the journey with the church in this pursuit. I am hoping personally that even in my own study and as I teach through Philippians, that I will encounter and experience this well because I am hungry for this.
Yeah. You got to save some for next Sunday, man.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
You're letting all the good stuff out now. And we'll have resilient joy even if the Seahawks go 0-10 over the next 10 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's you know what, and that is the main reason why I chose this, because in the midst of an increasingly difficult time for Seahawks fans, this letter is for you.
Exactly. Regardless of how Gino does the next 10 weeks.
Yeah, and it's probably not going to be good, guys. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you're wrong about that. Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap things up. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching the Follow-Up podcast, and we will see you guys next week.
See you guys Sunday.